Hi everyone, welcome. So we're gonna let people join for another minute or so and then we're gonna get started. Just a couple of heads up as we're getting started though. We are recording this training, so a heads up there. And also we're doing this in a meeting format so that we can do some breakout rooms, but everyone should be joining in mute. We will have times where we ask people to take themselves off mute, but for now, please keep yourself muted. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. We will have Morgan and Daisy will be monitoring the chat box, and we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So just once again, for anyone who's just joining us, thank you for joining our first ever Yes on Prop 17 activist training. We're super excited that you can join us. And today we're going to be covering a number of topics that will help empower you to go out and spread the word about Prop 17 and also to participate in the November election. So again, this is being recorded. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat box and we will be monitoring those. We'll also have time for Q&A later. And please make sure that you are on mute. So presenters today, I can start. My name is Brittany Stonecipher. I'm from ACLU of California. And our other presenters today will be Jesse Koklas from Initiate Justice, Shay Franco-Clausen from the Yes on 17 campaign, Dora Rose from League of Women Voters of California, Daisy Chavez from Initiate Justice, and Lisa Schottenfield, I hope I got that right, I'm sorry if I didn't, for Home Surge, standing up for racial justice. So let's go ahead and get started. So just to give you a quick outline of what you can expect from this training, we're going to start with some community building in a moment. So we're going to break out into small breakout rooms so that you can connect with each other. And then we'll also do some breakout rooms at the end so you can talk about what you learned and opportunities to turn that into action. We will give you an introduction to the Yes on 17 campaign and who's behind it, what Prop 17 is. We'll also get into some of our top line talking points and messages. And each week when we do these trainings, we're going to take a deep dive into one of our messages. So this week, we're going to be taking a deep dive into how felony disenfranchisement ties into a racist legacy of voter suppression and Jim Crow segregation. Then we will be talking about ways to support the campaign. So we'll have a various list of actions, and then we'll take a deep dive each week into a specific action. This week, we're going to be looking at how to vote this November and what to expect when you cast your ballot and register. And then we'll wrap up with some resources to support the campaign, and we'll leave some time for Q&A. So with that, I will hand it over to our next presenter. Go ahead and take it away, Jessie.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Jessie with Initiate Justice, she, her pronouns. So to start off, we have some community agreements for our session today. The first one is make space, take space. So, aka step up, step back. So if you're taking up a lot of space with talking or questions, especially in your breakout groups, make sure to leave room for other people. One mic, so trying to speak over people, it's especially hard with Zoom to hear people if multiple people are talking. And mindful listening, so be present in this session so we can get the most out of it. I want to open it up to everyone here to ask if anyone has anything to add. If you want to add something to these community agreements, you can put it in the chat, or you can go to participants and click the raise hand function and I can call on you. Just wait a minute for that. Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hand or adding anything. Maybe I just add, be respectful to everyone here and respect others.
Indigo has a raised hand.
Okay. Oh, Indigo, go ahead.
Hey y'all, I would just like to add person-centered language I know for some of us it goes without saying, but I'd love to add that.
That's great. Person-centered language. Love that. In the chat, we have assume best intentions. That's important. Okay. Thank you for those. Any other raised hands? No. Okay, so let's move on into our pods. We're gonna have 5 minutes in our breakout groups to discuss in smaller groups what brought you to this training and what does parole disenfranchisement mean to you. So you're gonna have something pop up on your screen that says join breakout group. And just click yes and you'll be directed to a smaller group.
All right, thanks everybody.
If you want to wrap up and then hand over to our next presenter.
Yeah, so it was really nice to connect with people on a smaller level, on a smaller group level. I think, yeah, in the interest of time, I don't think we'll do report backs, but I think I'll pass it on to the next facilitator and who is Shay, for an overview of Prop 17.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just have to say that it's 5 pages of people here today. That is hella impressive. I see how California shows up. So first, just give yourself a round of applause for showing up to make change together. So my name is Shay Franco-Claassen. I'm a California native to the Bay Area and formerly incarcerated. And I feel honored that I was picked to even run this campaign and how women in this movement support other women, doing this work. And so what brought me to Prop 17 is in my own family, I've got siblings there's 12 of us, 8 of us have been incarcerated. Of the 8, I was saying 4 that are currently in jail and 2 that are on parole currently right now. And so this was a specific thing for me that I wanted to be a part of. And I believe that everyone should have the right to vote. So when it comes to Prop 13, this is going to be on the ballot in 88 days, but voting actually starts in 55 days. And what Prop 17 is going to do is restore the rights of those people who have served their prison terms that are reintegrating back into their communities, back with their families, their children, siblings, relatives, to have an investment in what happens in representation, and the rules and the funding that happens really relies on their vote. So Prop 17 will just do that for those people that are leaving the state prison on a felony conviction on parole. Once they get out, this is going to give them, once passed in January, the right to vote. This does not mean people with felony convictions that are currently in prison. This means when they are coming out on parole, just so we're very, very clear. And I think it says that right there, just to make sure so we can establish between the two. A little bit about who's involved with, who's behind Free the Vote that is now yes on Prop 17. It's a coalition of people from criminal justice reform organizations, voter right organizations, civic engagement organizations, and California legislators and the Secretary of State, and a lot of celebrity people that want to use their platform to share why voting rights matter and how everybody should be a part of democracy. I'm just going to give you a little bit about who those people are, because a lot of them are here today in the House. And we have ACLU, Brennan Center for Justice, League of Women Voters, obviously Initiate Justice, Mi Familia Vota, People Over Profit, Indivisible California. We have Surge showing up for racial justice, Smart Justice California, Vote Allies, Brett, White People for Black Lives. And recently we just got the amazing support because a lot of these organizations that represent this work on a continuous, seeing how valuable it is for people to have the right to vote, Equality California, the California Democratic Party, SEIU California, just to name a few, and we have so much more coming in. Just to move back to the presentation, I think it's very simple. Voting rights for everyone really matters. If we want people to show up to make change and the people that represent us, then we need more people that are impacted making the decision. And by, approving and voting in Prop 17, it does just that. The people that have not had a voice, the most vulnerable people that are in our unjust system really need to be back in making the decisions and helping us come up with solutions with their vote. So that's what my little presentation is about, is just to make sure that you all know, I think voting rights are for everyone. I really don't care. I just think everyone should have the right to vote. I was going to say more, but as the presentation goes on, there's so many amazing speakers here that are going to give a lot more information. So my name is Shay Franco-Clausen. I'm the campaign manager. My email and information is online. I'm an open book. If anyone has any questions, I'm so down, but I'll be here at every training to also give any insight and updates on the campaign as we go along. So thank you for having me, team.
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. And I'll hand it over to Dora Rose from League of Women Voters. Dora, I think you might be on mute.
I muted myself. You can hear me now, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. The League of Women Voters has been fighting for voting rights for 100 years now. In fact, this is our centennial year. Woohoo! 100 years. We have seen voter suppression take many creative forms, from really restrictive voter ID rules to purging of voter rolls to insufficient access through not enough machines or not enough polling places. What's fairly consistent about all of this is that people whose voting rights are under attack are most often Black and brown. What we see with felony disenfranchisement is that Black and brown communities are over-policed. And we all know there's really deep systemic racial inequities in America's criminal legal system, resulting in a situation where a vastly disproportionate number of people who are incarcerated are Black or brown, where 75% of men leaving California prisons are Black, Latino, or Asian American. So restoring voting rights to people who used to be incarcerated is really fundamentally a fight back against racist voter suppression. Specifically, what does Prop 17 do? Well, like others have said, it would amend California's constitution to restore voting rights to 50,000 people who are returning home from prison and who are placed on parole. But what does it mean to be on parole? Well, first of all, parole is not an extension of a prison sentence. That needs to be really clear. It's not intended to be punishment, right? In fact, it's a time for rebuilding lives. It's a time for reintegrating into society. It's really a critical moment in time when we can capture people's enthusiasm to use their voices and to engage in the political process. And that enthusiasm is really beautifully captured in the Initiate Justice report, Democracy Needs Everyone. If you haven't seen that yet, you should get your hands on it. I think we have a list of resources that Brittany provided in this training. Democracy Needs Everyone is a critical one. You're hearing directly from people who have been impacted. Democracy Needs Everyone isn't just a slogan, right? To silence voices that have directly experienced the injustices of the criminal legal system is a loss to all of us, right? It is a loss of expertise. It is a loss of hearing about the issues that we are all fighting against from the people who are closest to them, and we need to make sure that stops happening. And just think for a minute about the assault that this prohibition is to fundamental democratic rights. People on parole are living and working in their communities. They pay taxes, they send their kids to school. They should be able to have a say over the policies that impact them. If you're paying taxes, you should be represented in government. Bottom line. If your kid's in school, you should be able to vote for who's on the school board. For society at large, well, there are studies that show that promoting civic engagement not only makes our country stronger, it also makes it safer. That may also sound sort of like a tagline, but it's really a critically important concept to understand as we message Prop 17. When people feel that they're valued members of the community and that their needs and their concerns are addressed, they are less likely to be rearrested. These things, all these things that I've been talking about, have been recognized in 19 other states and in the District of Columbia, where either voting rights are restored on release from prison or there's no felony disenfranchisement at all. That means that we're playing catch up in California. Last year, Colorado, Nevada, and New Jersey, just in last year, all passed laws to restore voting rights to people on parole. So we are way behind the curve on this one. So how did we get here? Well, I've been asked to talk a little bit about the history. How we got here is absolutely no accident. And you can move to the next slide, whoever's doing the slides. Felony disenfranchisement in the California Constitution can be traced directly to a history of racially discriminatory Jim Crow laws passed in the 1800s. In 1849, delegates debated and drafted California's first constitution. In it, slavery was outlawed, not because our forefathers were abolitionists, far from it. It was because slavery was considered to give an unfair advantage to slave owners in the labor market and in the gold fields. Okay? A huge question at the time was whether African Americans should be banned from California altogether. What was never in dispute is that to be a citizen and to have voting rights, you had to be a white male. At the same time that our forefathers were writing this first constitution in 1849, the US treaty that ended the Mexican-American War in 1848 guaranteed citizenship to Mexicans in California. That caused quite a bit of consternation because many of those folks had Indian ancestry. They were people of color. So how do you preserve a racist state when you're being forced by the federal government to include Mexican Americans as citizens? Well, they embedded felony disenfranchisement in that first constitution as well. And then they enacted laws that stripped Mexicans of their lands. So Mexicans trying to resist that land grab, that deterritorialization, they were subject to criminal sanctions, essentially criminalizing much of the Mexican population and making them subject to being disenfranchised. You can move to the next slide. So over time, California passed a whole host of laws that were tantamount to, and in some cases they actually foreshadowed, Jim Crow black codes of the South. On the word of any white person, any Indian deemed to be loitering or strolling about could be arrested and sold to the highest bidder to labor for a period of 4 months. Where did they labor? Well, very often in the gold fields. Slave labor. People of color were prohibited from giving evidence in court for or against a white man. You had to be able to read the Constitution in English and to write your name to vote. And English-only ballots served as the functional equivalent of literacy tests. And of course, you know, back to it, felony disenfranchisement coupled with really persistently large racial disparities in arrests and sentencing, that's another tool that has really perniciously diluted the voting strength of communities of color. You can move to the next slide. In fact, California refused to ratify the 15th Amendment, which made it unconstitutional, as most of you know, to deny voting rights on the basis of race. They refused to ratify the 15th Amendment until 1962. 1962. In the 1860s, the state was controlled by Democrats, and as you all know, the Democrats at that time were the party of segregation. Segregation in the South and segregation in California. The original reasons for the refusal to ratify are found very clearly stated in this Democratic State Committee resolution from 1867 that you see in front of you on this page. I'm just going to read this short part of it. I mean, the thing is replete with these examples. But I'll read this because this passage sums up the thinking so well. So it's a little easier for me to read from paper than from the screen. We believe it impracticable to maintain Republican institutions based upon the suffrages of Negroes, Chinese, and Indians, and that the doctrines avowed by the radical leaders of indiscriminate suffrage, regardless of race, color, or qualification, if carried into practice, would end in the degradation of the white race and the speedy destruction of the government. But of course, California was forced to implement the 15th Amendment after its ratification by other states. So what did California legislators do? Well, they limited the franchise to white men wherever they could. The 1879 Constitution prohibited any native of China from voting. Most Chinese at that point were immigrants, and while you could vote if you were born in the US, a series of laws limited Chinese immigration all the way up until major reform legislation in the 1960s. And of course, it was 1911 in California, another 41 years after the 15th Amendment, before women got the right to vote, and another 50 before we got it nationally through the 19th Amendment in 1920. And Native Americans living on reservations, they didn't get the right to vote until Congress extended them citizenship in 1924. So what does this all mean to us today? It means that felony disenfranchisement, enshrined in our very first Constitution in 1849, goes hand in hand with a really sordid history of racist voter suppression in California. It means that Prop 17, restoring voting rights to people on parole, is a matter of racial justice, and it's a moral imperative. It's a fight. It's a fight for the hearts and minds of Californians. It's a fight that is long overdue. And I want to thank you all, so many of you. I'm so happy to see such a turnout. I want to thank you for being in this fight with us. With you, I feel even more certain that we're going to win this thing.
Thank you so much, Vera. So that was a very detailed and amazing and helpful section on overall the messaging that we're using for Prop 17, but more foundationally, how we're rooted in this continuing legacy of reversing a long history of voter suppression, and why Prop 17 is a part of really reversing a lot of the institutional racism that as a country we are fighting back against right now. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about ways that you can support the Prop 17 campaign. So I'll start with some overviews of different actions that you can take, and then I'll take a deep dive into this first item. So the most important thing you can do is register and vote if you are eligible to do so. We really need to make sure that if you can vote, you turn out, you make sure that your friends turn out. And we'll say, as we get further into this, we'll ask you to commit at the end to talking to at least a few friends over the next week about Prop 17. You can also get your agency or your community to endorse Yes on Prop 17. So we just relaunched our website, yes17.vote today, and it will include a number of different ways that you can support the campaign, including an endorsement form. And those endorsements will be listed on our campaign website. And that's a really powerful way to show that you are behind this movement and that you're willing to stand behind this change. You can also talk to your friends, as I mentioned, so you can commit to talking to 5 friends over the next week about Prop 17 to let them know what it is, and to ask them to follow us on social media. So our handle on Instagram and Facebook is Yes on Prop 17. And then our handle on Twitter is FreeTheVoteCA, which we'll list again later on. You can also join our email list. So that's through our website, again, yeson17.vote. And we will be sending out weekly emails to find out ways to get involved with the campaign, to send out updates. Donations, as much as we run this campaign on passion and commitment, it also takes money to create awesome resources like the t-shirts that we're wearing, which we will be getting up on our website hopefully pretty soon in the next few weeks, and then to do outreach. So we would love donations. If you are able to contribute to the campaign, you can do that through our website. And then you can also ask another activist to join you at our next training. So these are going to be an ongoing series of trainings. This is our very first one, but we're going to be doing them every other week from now until Election Day. So our next public activist training will be on Friday, the 21st at 1 p.m. It'll be at the same time every other week. And it'll be roughly the same overview. So anyone who's joining for the first time will get to learn about the campaign and get the background that you got, but we'll also be taking a deep dive into a different talking point and a different way to support each time. So they'll have some new content for people who are joining us for the second or third or recurring time. So today I'm going to take a deep dive into how to participate in the November election. And if you are not eligible to vote, recognizing that because of the forms of systemic oppression that Dora went into detail about, I know a number of people on this call may not be eligible to vote, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that you cannot participate and you can't help pass 17. There are many, many ways that you can help support Prop 17, including by helping to let other people know what voter eligibility looks like in California and how to register and cast their ballots. So to start out, in order to be able to vote in California, you have to be both eligible and registered. So what does that mean? To be eligible to vote in California, you have to meet a few specific criteria. One, you have to be a US citizen, and you also have to be a resident of California. Fortunately, there's no time limit, so you don't have to have been a resident of California for any period of time, just right now on election day. You also have to be a resident of the county and the precinct that you are voting in. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. You also have to be at least 18 years old on election day. In California, you can pre-register to vote if you are 16 or 17, but you cannot actually vote until you are 18 years old. Also, you must not be presently in state or federal prison or on state parole. So that is one of the major things right there that, of course, that we're trying to change with Prop 17. But for this November's election, you cannot vote if you are presently in state or federal prison or on state parole. And then you also cannot vote in California if you are currently found mentally incompetent to vote by a court, which is not a term that we came up with. That's a legal term. So if you do not fit into those last two criteria, but you are a US citizen, resident of California, and 18 years old on election day, you can register and you can vote this November. So to take a little bit deeper of a dive into that criteria that's highlighted in blue. So one of the things that we are trying to change with Prop 17 is we're trying to make it more clear who can and can't vote in California. Because we're phrasing this in the most simple way that we can. You currently can't vote if you are in state or federal prison or on state parole. But it gets kind of confusing for a lot of people in practice, because in California, you are eligible to vote if you are an otherwise eligible adult, but you are in county jail for a felony or a misdemeanor, if you are on probation for a felony or a misdemeanor, if you're awaiting trial for any crime, if you are discharged from parole, meaning you've finished your state parole and you're done with it now, or you're on any other kind of community supervision that isn't parole. So oftentimes people can get confused in practice. So someone might say, well, I'm on probation and I'm not sure if I can vote, but my friend is on parole and he's been told that he can't vote. And I don't want to get in trouble for voting if I'm not eligible to, so I'm just going to sit this one out. And so even though there are 50,000 people who are directly disenfranchised by parole disenfranchisement in California, there are many, many more people who end up experiencing what's called de facto disenfranchisement. They don't participate in the election because the law is confusing and they think they're not allowed to. And often there are penalties, and they're widely publicized in many cases, for voting when you're not eligible to. So what we want to be able to do with Prop 17, in addition to making the law more fair, is to make it more clear so that we can say, if you are not inside a prison right now, you can vote. Simple. If you're outside of prison and you're otherwise eligible, you can vote. But presently, this slide shows you who is eligible to vote in California. And if you want to take a closer look at that, I would refer you to a website called letmevoteka.org, which gives a specific breakdown of who can and cannot vote in California with a conviction. You can also check out the Secretary of State's website. So I mentioned that in addition to being eligible, you have to be registered to vote. There are a few options in California for registering to vote. The first is to register by the regular deadline. I put deadlines in quotes because it's not a hard deadline. It is the deadline for getting mailed voter registration materials. It's the deadline to be able to register through a paper form or online. We could call it the administrative deadline. And that is 15 days before any election. So this year for the November election, it's going to be October 19th is the 15-day regular deadline. But if you miss that regular deadline, you are not out of luck. You still have some options, because in California, we have something called same-day voter registration. And what that allows you to do is, after that 15-day mark, so anytime from 14 days before Election Day all the way up to close of polls on Election Day, you can register to vote and vote on the same day. So not being registered in advance should never be a barrier in California. How do you do that? So again, if you're registering up to the 15-day deadline, in this case, October 19th, you can do that by submitting a form online, either through the Secretary of State's website or through your county elections website. You can also submit a paper voter registration form, or you can call your local county registrar and find out what other options are available for you to register remotely. Between October 20th and Election Day, generally same-day voter registration has to be done in person. So that means going to a polling place or a vote center in your county. You do not have to show identification to vote in California, but if you're registering to vote for the very first time, it's a good idea to bring ID and proof of residency with you, just in case. And if you want to get more information about all of that and how to register to vote, you can check out registertovote.ca.gov. And I would really encourage everyone, even if you think that you're already registered, just to go ahead and check your voter registration status. There's a lot of benefits to that. You can update your preferences, so you can update your language preferences, you can update your vote by mail preferences, you can update your address, which is going to be really important this November. And also, if for some reason you have been placed on an inactive voter file, which means you haven't voted in a long time, or maybe you had a bounce back on a previous piece of mail, it makes sure that your registration is updated and current. And that matters especially this November, because there are some new opportunities for how to cast your ballot. Usually in California, you have to request a vote by mail ballot in advance to be sent one, or you have to be living in a certain county called a Voter's Choice Act county, where you automatically get sent one. But because we are voting during a pandemic, the most logical thing to do for most voters is to be able to have a remote option for casting your ballot, so that you don't have to go in person, stand in line, be in a crowded polling place, etc. So as a way to help protect both democracy and the health of voters, this November in California, all California voters will be automatically mailed a vote by mail ballot. You do not have to do anything to get sent one, except make sure that you are active and registered and their address is up to date, right? So if you're already in the voter registration database with the current address, you should be getting a vote by mail ballot. But again, this is an important reason to check your registration right now. You can return that ballot that you get in the mail through a few different means. You can put it back in the mail through USPS. No postage is required in California. If you don't feel comfortable or you don't have access to USPS, you can also try to find a ballot drop box. So many counties will be having secured ballot drop boxes all over the city or the county. And those will be picked up directly by employees or volunteers from the county elections department. So they do not go through USPS if you put them in a drop box. Or finally, you can drop off that mailed ballot at any in-person voting location. But if you don't feel comfortable voting by vote by mail, or you don't receive your vote by mail ballot in time, or you make an error when filling out your vote by mail ballot, whatever reason, you also have the option to vote in person in California. So in order to find out where those are, you can check your local county elections office's website, or you can check the Secretary of State website at the URL on the slide for their locations and hours. Those will vary by county, but in most counties, you're going to have some early voting options available. Many counties will have vote centers and polling places open as early as Halloween, so starting on Saturday the 31st. Also at in-person voting locations, again, you can get same-day registration services. And also if you need language or disability assistance, you can get that help in person at any polling place or vote center. And on Election Day, all polling places and vote centers will be open from at least 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Again, that's going to be November 3rd. what day is election day? November 3rd. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And if you are in line outside of a vote center or polling place at 8 p.m., you still have the right to vote. So sometimes poll workers are not aware of that. So just delicately remind them that if you are in line by 8 p.m., you have the right to vote. And if you run into any problems on election day, a great resource is the Election Protection Hotline, which is 866-OUR-VOTE. Same thing for their phone number and their website, 866-OUR-VOTE, and they can give you real-time information and connect you with attorneys and advocates who can help you know what your rights are. And with that, I will hand it over to Daisy, who's going to talk about some resources we have for Prop 17.
Thanks, Brittany. And again, just thank you all for being here. It's amazing to see everyone showing up and supporting this hard work campaign. So I just want to briefly go over some of the resources that are available for folks who are either learning about the campaign, want to learn more about it. As mentioned in the chat and throughout the presentation, our website is live and up. It's yeson17.vote, and that's where you will be able to access our fact sheet. You can sign up for our email list. You can take a look at who has endorsed the campaign thus far. And you can also follow us on our social media, which is also linked on our website. We are at Yes on Prop 17 on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, our handle is at FreeTheVoteCA. And you can also contact us with any questions about the campaign at info@yeson17.vote, as well as media@yeson17.vote. And we are going to be having these activist training sessions bi-weekly, with our next one scheduled for the 21st of August at 1 o'clock. Each one will be focusing on a different talking point. That way folks can really gain a deep understanding as to why this is an important and historic move that we need to push for to pass in November. And so with that, what I'll do is I'll take a quick question for the sake of time, since we are set to do one last breakout session. There was a question by Keith that I wanted to pose for the speakers that I think a lot of people are curious about, is there are any programs or organizations that are bringing materials into county jails to register folks who are inside to vote, and also bringing voter ballots inside to make sure that they are able to vote while in county jail. So is any one of our speakers able to address that particular question?
I think I can do it with Dora. So here in Santa Clara County, we actually have a program, Justice and Advocacy, that we work inside the jail with the program manager. We've worked with the League of Women Voters and the Register of Voters to make sure that their ballots are there. They're gonna receive their ballots, at least in our county jail, on the second week of September, but I don't know how they distribute them, but they will actually receive them on the 5th as everybody else will. And at that point, as far as getting information about what's on the ballot, they've allowed us to do, for and against material, to giving them a choice that they will have based on this county.
I'm actually going to punt that to Brittany, because we've been working with Brittany, with the ACLU, on a toolkit for ensuring that people in county jails are allowed to both register and vote. But that's something that actually gets implemented at the local level, so I don't have much hands-on engagement with that once the toolkit is drafted and out. So go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah, so as Dora said, this is county by county. Whether organizations are let in this November, it's not likely that community organizations will be let into county jails because of decreased visitation and programming because of COVID. But we will be releasing, as Dora said, a jail voting toolkit that will contain multiple models for how to implement a jail voter registration and turnout program. Everything from going inside to empowering your local election official and sheriff to doing a remote inside organizer empowerment by sending in materials or calling inside activists. And that will be released on the 19th of this month, and it'll live on letmevoteca.org, which is that resource that I mentioned earlier that presently has general information about voting in California with a conviction. And we'll also be doing, just to do a side plug, we'll be doing a webinar on the 26th of this month to accompany the release of that toolkit. So I will make sure that everyone who registered for this training gets information about that toolkit.
In the chat so we can all see. Yes, you've got all caps text to my friends. I love it. Who else can commit to taking action this week? All right,
Can I
Brett,
share something?
Yeah, go for it.
So I have in my breakout room that quite a few folks were really surprised by the fact that the people in the county jail can vote. So I just want to share an experience here in San Diego. What we did was basically we organized like teams to go into the county jail to basically register people to vote. But I just, I encourage everyone in other regions to also do that. But I want to also give you guys a heads up is that most of the time the sheriff will not want you to do it. So you want to do it now, like talk to them and then trying to bypass that hurdle because they're gonna try to throw like a whole bunch of stumbling block at you, like telling you to have to go like background check and all kind of stuff. So work with legal women voters or whatnot in your area and organize into those area. And if they blocked you, there's a way what you can also do is basically what we did was we obtained the list of the folks in the jail and then send them an email. We broke the system here in San Diego to the point where they actually eventually had to allow us to go and register people to vote. So it's a good effort, but you have to plan it at least a month in advance.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know we're coming to the end of our time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, for committing to these actions. It's amazing to be with you all. I would love to see a show of hands. Who can join us for our next training? It's going to be in 2 weeks on the 21st. Put your hands up if you can join. Yes. Who can bring a friend to the training? Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you all. So glad to be in this with you. So excited to see you next time and hear about all the things that you've been doing since then to help us pass Prop 17. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.